presence yoga retreat. Those of you that have heard my talks or been to meetings with me and so on, this will be a little bit different. And hopefully it will be interesting and valuable and entertaining for you. This retreat is oriented completely around one thing, very, very, very simple. It's oriented around radiant presence. And we will go at great length and experientially into exactly what that means and what to do about it, if anything. This principle of radiant presence is the very root principle of existence itself. It is the principle of your being. It is the principle of the being of this universe. It's the principle of reality itself existing. This is the absolute root principle. Approaching this directly and nakedly is the most direct, the most fundamental, the most radical spiritual technique, you might say, and is at the root of virtually all of the most powerful spiritual traditions that have existed historically. This root condition of radiant presence is itself the root of realization and the root of confusion. So all suffering that we can experience in terms of misunderstanding our life, in terms of identifying with the difficulty of our circumstances, in terms of all of that, is based solely in this actual condition of radiant presence. And likewise, realization, absolute intrinsic transcendence, absolute freedom, absolute unboundedness is likewise based in this fact. Radiant presence is an actuality. It's not an abstraction. It's not something that one needs to aspire to or imagine or create. The word presence, the two words, radiant, presence, is a very specific word. Presence refers to actuality. Presence refers to being. Your experience is, right? Your experience is actual. It is present. This is an undeniable fact. Exactly what that is and how that is and so on is subtle and strange, to say the least. Radiance refers to all of the characteristics that are present within and as this actuality. All experience, anything whatsoever that shows up in experience is radiant. And again, exactly what this means we'll go into at great depth and from many different angles over the course of the next 3.5 days. That's all this retreat's about. A very important principle of this retreat is that it's all about you. And when I say you, I'm not talking to a group. I'm talking to the one sole being that is hearing these words. So this is addressed to you. This is about you. It's all about your experience. There will be a certain amount of talking during this retreat. There will be a certain amount of suggestion on my part to try things or explore things, or I'll introduce various ideas and so on. But again and again and again, the sole purpose of these ideas is to refer directly to your experience, right here, right now, in real time. These ideas are not abstractions. They are pointers to actuality that is happening right now, right here, in your experience. So, as much as possible, whenever you play with, or explore, or receive, or hear any of these ideas or suggestions, immediately see if you can find anything within your own actual real-time experience that they might refer to, that it might be relevant to. Because it's all about your experience. The actuality of your experience, present, the actuality of your very experience, right here, right now, which is undeniably the case, is the sole authority. I have no authority. These words have no authority. These, teachings and suggestions and ideas have no authority. The authority is the actuality of your experience. And all of this is relevant only insofar as it ties back into that it touches that it addresses that. Your experience is your power. Your experience is your opportunity. Your experience itself is the doorway to freedom and transcendence and empowerment. The actuality, the very actuality of your experience right here, right now. The radiant presence that you will be directly working with is your teacher, is the authority. It will show you what it is. It will show you what to do. It will answer any questions you have. I can, at best, try to keep steering you again and again to being with that direction. Try and avoid hypnosis. In retreats and these kinds of settings, it's very easy to find yourself in a passive state. There's some guy up here who's talking and going away and teaching and blah, 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 and people are and you have to go into a passive mode when you're receptive and you're waiting to be told what to do and you're waiting to be spoon-fed, whatever it is you're hoping to be spoon-fed. Always and continually be in self-oriented exploration, active exploration. So if there's an idea being suggested or an experiment being suggested, you take it, you own it, you enact it to whatever extent you seem to be inspired to, and make it real for yourself, not by trying to fit into a teaching or trying to fit into an idea, but look within your own experience, see if you can find an actuality that this might be referring to, because that actuality alone is powerful. Absolutely useless to try to pretend to fit into teachings or ideas or live up to some sorts of, frames of reference on, or aspire to see things in a certain way or whatever. The actuality of your experience is your opportunity. not uncontrived, not by you doing something with it or aspiring to something or creating something or pretending or trying to purify it or shut it down. But that's what it actually is intrinsically. Turns out to be your power point. So be proactive, don't be passive. This is your retreat, so you do it. It's up to you to do it. This is so be active, don't be passive. Don't let yourself go numb and go passive. Be real. Just be who you are, however you happen to be at the moment. Don't try and pretend to be something else. Just be whatever you happen to be. Be what you are. The whole ball of wax, the whole shooting match, whatever that happens to be. Go where it leads. This retreat has no rules. Absolutely none. Do whatever you want. You want to fuck off. You want to go, take the day off and go out in the woods and smoke pot. Go for it. I don't care. Because again, you follow what seems powerful for you, what seems true for you. Because anything other than that is useless. It's a waste of time. It's pretense. It's just passing time. It's just going to tie you up in knots of confusion. Don't try to live up to any teachings or live up to any principles or fake it to be a certain way or something. Just try and find, maybe some things will be suggested and you'll look at them and go, what? What's this? This has nothing to do with me. Well, okay, it has nothing to do with you. So cool, you just cross it off. You throw it out the window and hang out and do something else. So you are the authority. You are the leader of this retreat. And you're in it alone. This is not a group. This is you. You are here in your experience. So forget everyone else. Who cares about them? This is about you. A nice, interesting, optimistic metaphor for this retreat is you being led into a treasure chamber where there's caskets of jewels and gold and all sorts of inconceivably valuable treasure flying around, and there's no guard. But you have to pick it up. It's not going to jump out of the casket into your pocket. You have to reach out, grab it, own it, and run off with it. So it's your activity, it's your self-orientation that will be your power, that will be your ability to really get something real out of this. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for it to be brought up. Don't wait for if you're ahead of the game, be ahead of the game. This is about you. So go where the truth, the verity of your actual experience is taking you. Go with it. Explore it. Run with it. Okay. Central to what we'll be doing here is working with shifting your orientation from a conceptual and defined relationship to your experience to an actual self-presence of your experience. Which is what is actually present. Non-conceptuality is very useful for this. Non-verbal being with your experience is very useful for this. Silence is very useful for this. Not talking is very useful for this. This is not officially a silent retreat to the extent that it has no rules. So it couldn't very well do that. However, I strongly recommend, if you find yourself going to your usual, I'm sitting in a room and I'm listening to the talk, I strongly recommend you make a point of not talking, just as a way of sort of re-habituating yourself. I mean, obviously we talk a lot, we're all really good at that, we're all really good at connecting, hi, how you doing, what's been going on, blah, 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 blah. And, which is fine, I mean, that's great fun and all that. But for the purposes of what we're doing here, most of us have been overemphasizing that portion of that mode of relating to our experience, and we have been underemphasizing, in a certain sense, relating to the direct energy that is actually present as the actuality of your experience, which is not verbal, which is not what you think it is, which does not correspond to or conform to your definitions and your labels and your narrations and your stories. It just doesn't. And so to notice that, to make that leap, to really make that the active, most dominant mode of your experience, it may help to use some tricks like not talking, like not thinking. Like if you find yourself thinking, go into some more non-verbal sensory experience. And we'll be playing around with all this stuff a lot. This is a sort of a general overview. Most of this retreat is going to consist of experiential exploration, of directly being with these transcendental energies that actually the experience consists of, and discovering what they actually are in their own terms. So, if you find it helpful to be with your experience non-conceptually, I strongly recommend you not talk with other people. If you do want to talk, I very strongly recommend you talk only about real-time experience. Don't talk about the past, don't talk about the future, don't talk too much about definitions of things. You might talk about qualities. This dinner tastes really good to me. That doesn't depart from direct energy presence too much. What do you think about Romney for president? I mean, talk about abstraction on abstraction, dizzying. So that kind of conversation is, I don't recommend it. There's no rules. If you want to talk like that, go for it. I don't care. But it's liable to, unless you are at a very profound place with this, which you may well be, because again, you are an individual and you have to be with the actual authority of where you are experientially, what's true for you, not trying to be something that you're supposed to be, or trying to be something that some teaching says you should be or should aspire to be. So be real. So look at yourself. If you're getting caught up in a lot of words, do some of the more non-verbal stuff. If the words can come and go like wind in an empty house, and it doesn't mean anything, then you're immune. You're bulletproof. You're Teflon. That's great. And ultimately, that's where you get to with this. Ultimately, words are not entrapping or a problem at all. But again, this depends upon the maturity with which you are integrated with the actuality of radiant presence that constitutes your being. Now, there's a couple of principles that go hand in hand, which are very powerful and which will be going all through this and all through all of your experience all the time. First of which is what you pay attention to tends to increase in your experience. What you don't pay attention to tends to diminish in your experience. It's pretty simple. So if you find yourself dwelling on something or being with your experience in a certain way, that mode of dwelling or being will tend to get bigger and loom larger and be more dominant in your experience. And likewise, correspondingly, if you tend to ignore something or really just have it be very minimized part of the attention of your attention to your experience, it will tend to diminish. It will recede in importance and in dominance within your experience. So this is very useful in terms of navigating your experience. You'll find you can navigate how you are with your experience by using this principle and one other principle, which is that curiosity, not willpower, is the navigational force within radiant presence. And intelligence is drawn to what it's interested in. It doesn't go where you try to tell it to go. It's going to go where it's interested in. So the trick is, if you want to go somewhere, find what's interesting about it. Let yourself be seduced by where you want to go, and you will be drawn to it like water flowing downhill. So those two principles are very useful for navigating within your experience. When you give attention to something, it gets bigger in your experience. It gets more permanent. It looms larger and larger. And curiosity is the navigating force. Curiosity is what determines where your attention tends to go. Your attention goes to where it's interested, to where it finds something interesting or powerful or somehow vibrant or entertaining or whatever. So this is a general overview, a suggestion of how to work with this retreat, how to be here, and just a few overall tricks of how to maneuver within it. Now, the rest of this evening, I'm going to be introducing you to Radiance. Presence, which could be said to be the other principle. Oh, sorry.
For the benefit of the internet audience listening, can you try to switch the audio from the laptop to the line in?
It is.
Because they're saying it's muddled, so I thought that might be the only...
No, we're good.
dilemma.
We're good. If it's muddled, it's because it's muddled. Catching on reload. Sorry about that. Try headphones. Okay. So, the two aspects are, again, very arbitrarily invented by me. The two aspects of reality are radiance and presence. Now, presence is hard to work with. It's hard to do much with presence. It's just a simple fact. This is actual. But what does that mean? You look at it very rapidly, you get to a point of pretty weird, but it's self-evidently true. So this exists. But you can't do much with that. Radiance, on the other hand, you can get a whole lot of mileage out of it. So radiance is what we're going to be working with. Everything whatsoever is radiant. If it appears in your experience, it's radiant. In any sense, in any degree of subtlety or coherence or incoherence or absolute, wacko, ungraspability, if it appears, it's radiant. Now, think of this. Your experience is like a bubble, like a sphere. Right now, I'm not, again, these words, don't just trip on the words and go off into ideas. Look back at your experience right here, right now, and see if there's any sense in which you can relate to this, or you can get any mileage out of it. Your experience is like a bubble, and everything that appears within your experience appears within this bubble. The bubble is presence itself. The bubble is you. Everything that appears is radiant. And again, we'll get into playing with what that is, what that means at great length. So, you alone exist. You alone are this bubble of experience that you're experiencing right now. Everything that appears in it is radiant. I am radiance appearing in the bubble of your experience. Your body is radiant appearing in the bubble of your experience. The sky is radiant appearing in the bubble of your experience. It all appears because you exist, because this bubble exists. This bubble is the bubble of actuality, the bubble of presence, the bubble of your being, your actual being, the bubble of reality. Everything whatsoever appears within it, and you alone experience it. It's very much like a dream. A dream we can see this very clearly. You wake up and you thought, God, all this stuff happened, and you know perfectly well it only happened in your experience. Same thing's happening right now. Everything is appearing. Where else is it appearing but in your experience? I mean, it's completely obvious. Right? You may be used to thinking, no, this is the world out there, and all these other people are here, and all that. But how do you know? The only way you know that, the only evidence you have, is because they're appearing in your experience. And when they appear in your experience, they're just appearing as appearance. And we're going to play with this in great detail and great depth as we go along. So, the bubble of your experience is the totality of reality. There's nothing else. There's no other reality elsewhere in the bubble of your experience. There's no other experiencer elsewhere in the bubble of your experience. And everything that appears within that experience, at any degree of level of subtlety or coarseness or whatever, is radiant. There's all, in the various spiritual traditions, there's all sorts of technical terms for all this stuff. But the point is not to become a comparative theologian. The point is to be a yogi. The point is to own this stuff. The point is to discover directly what's going on here, what you are, what this is. Because that alone is powerful. That alone is liberating. That alone is empowering. So the fact that radiance is called Shakti in some Indian traditions, or it's called cell in Dzogchen, or it's called this or that in these various traditions is unimportant. And the fact that I'm calling it radiance is unimportant. What's important is your experience right here, right now. So keep going back to that. All these words are not about words. These words are not about stories. They're either about your experience or they're about nothing whatsoever. You may as well be watching TV or getting drunk or whatever it is you like to do. Okay. Here's another aspect of that. The being of your experience, the fact that you are present, you exist, you are real right now, is the fundamental reality, the absolute reality. It's not some little reality that's derived from some great reality somewhere else, in some great pie in the sky, and some mega super reality, and this little old me down here with my little bitty reality, and I'm like a small spark or an offshoot of this greater. No. This being, this reality, this presence that you actually are, is the reality. Capital letters. This is it. This is the big one. This is the divine. This is the Dharmakaya. This is the absolute. This is the universe. This actual being right here, your being, is not trivial. It's not small. It's absolutely primal, absolutely radical. Is the very essence of things. The universe exists because you are. The universe exists because of your being, and the universe appears within your being, within this bubble of your experience. So, play with that, explore that, feel that, see the obvious fact that everything that appears within your experience. There's no one else there. You're the only one experiencing your experience. Right? I mean, just see that simple fact. See it experientially. So, one of the cardinal principles of radiance is dynamic. It's absolutely unstable. It shines, it sparkles, it tingles, it buzzes, it vibrates, it constantly dances and shimmers. It has absolutely no stability, absolutely no permanence. It's completely gone already. It's already gone. It's already something else. It's never anything for any time whatsoever. So it's anything for zero time. So it's already something else. It's just constantly something else, constantly morphing. It's momentary, it's instantaneous. All radiance is felt. All radiance is directly felt. Seeing is a euphemism for feeling light. Hearing is a euphemism for feeling sound. Touch is a euphemism for feeling contact, so on and so forth. Thought is a euphemism for feeling mental energy, and so on. And all of these different categorizations, like the different senses and mind and all that, are just arbitrary classifications of different aspects of radiance itself. This radiance is the same thing, whether it's showing up as felt light, as felt sound, as felt thought energy, as felt subtle energies of various, however you want to classify it, and so on and so forth. So, radiance is directly felt. You don't need to reach out to it. You don't need to, there's no bridging, there's no intermediary. It's direct. If it appears, it's being directly felt. Its appearance is, it's being felt. So, reality is a contact for it. You are always contacting radiance. Whenever you experience anything, you are contacting radiance. And there's no way to sort out how that happens, because there's no you there. There's just the radiance. Radiance is present, and we usually say conventionally, it's present to my consciousness, and my consciousness is experiencing it. No, it's just present. That makes absolutely no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. Who says this needs to make sense? It just is. There is light. Right? The light itself. Period. There is sound. The sound is felt. So on and so forth. So all of this, I'm hearing the sound, and my consciousness is hearing the sound, or the sound is appearing within the space of mind, something or other, or whatever. All of that is unnecessary elaboration. Radiance is directly present, directly felt, with no intermediation, no mechanism whatsoever. It just is. Right here, right now. Nothing else whatsoever is happening. Now, we come to the kicker. We come to the good stuff. Believe it or not. There's one fact of why this yoga of radiant presence is so powerful. It's so liberating. It directly reveals transcendence, because radiant presence is intrinsically transcendental. This radiance that is felt, magical. Completely magical. completely miraculous, literally, not in some metaphorical sense of, oh boy, it's kind of miraculous. But no, this is a fucking miracle. This that is showing up shows up because it shows up. It has no cause, it has no reason, it has no mechanism. It just is. So, being with this, noticing this as it is, you discover this, wow. We're not enmeshed on anything, we're not based on anything. My life is not a byproduct of some system. My life is magic, pure, perfect, absolutely transcendental magic, right here, right now. Because that's what this is. It's just what it is. And this becomes very obvious when you are with Radiance as it is. And we will be exploring this in great depth in the next few days. So this is why this is powerful. This is why this is so amazing. Because Radiance itself turns out to be inherently miraculous, inherently transcendental. So simply noticing Radiance, you're just slipping into the miraculous. Without doing anything. You don't need to do it, you don't need to try, you don't need to do anything, you don't even need to understand anything. You discover the self-evident fact that this is so. Radiance is not special. It's absolute normalcy. There's never been anything but radiance. The boring, normal, plodding, mundane details of your life and the world and everything else have always been nothing whatsoever other than this supremely miraculous transcendental radiance. Radiance is normalcy. It's not special. You don't need to aspire to specialness or discover specialness. Just this. That's what it is. Who cares? And that alone is sufficient. That alone does the trick. Because normalcy is radiance. Normalcy is miraculous and transcendental. Without needing to be special. You don't need to aspire to great bliss. You don't need to aspire to incredible visions of transcendence and interdimensional, travel and all that. All that stuff happens. But it's not important. Because there's nothing there that's not here in normalcy. There's nothing there that's not here when you're sitting on the toilet in the morning. It's all intrinsically this miraculous radiance. So radiance is the absolutely normal condition. It does not need to be special. It does not need to be in transcendental samadhis and walking on water and having experience of no self and all this other stuff. It just doesn't matter. And you can have all that stuff, but it's just going to be more radiant, so who cares? You're not getting anything. Okay. This ties in with the recommendations of not speaking, of minimizing your speaking. Although it's more the principle that's based upon. The normal understanding of what's important in experience is basically backwards. Okay? Patterns, let me put it this way. We tend to be fixated on patterns. We're fixated on here's a field of light that's my vision in the present moment, and there's people here, so there's patterns that I'm calling people, there's patterns I'm calling a room, there's patterns I'm calling trees, there's patterns I'm calling a computer, there's all these different patterns of energy in terms of arbitrary groupings of characteristics that seem to be showing up, and we're all very, very expert at fixating on these patterns, and orienting towards them, and generally ignoring what we aren't including in the pattern. And this is basically backwards. It's not completely backwards, but the qualitative quality is not existent. The important thing is the energy itself. The pattern it happens to show up in is basically irrelevant, basically completely unimportant. So the important thing in your field of vision is light. Not that you're seeing someone or seeing a room or seeing the sky or seeing a dark room, dark closed space. The important thing in your experience is the energy that it's made of. So that when you see, the important thing is light, not the pattern view. But we would usually say, well, what I'm seeing, what are you seeing? Well, I'm seeing a room and people. But that's just cataloging all the patterns I'm used to classifying the field of energy into. But we ignore the field of energy itself. And all of these patterns, it turns out, exist as fractal harmonics of the energy itself. They don't have any actual existence. They don't have any importance. They don't have any integrity. They don't have any coherence. So when you see a person, you're not seeing a person, you're seeing light. Pure and simple. When you feel your own body, you're not feeling a body, you're feeling light. You're feeling radiance. So on and so forth. This is backwards to our usual orientation. And the very essence of this as a yoga, the yoga of radiant presence, is to let yourself become aware of this direct radiant presence, this direct energy that is showing up, that actually constitutes the very substance of your experience. Literally, that not as an abstract thing. This is what is here. This is what is here right now, is this radiance. And it generates patterns. It shows up, it appears as if it was all these patterns, this infinite detail of patterns. But the patterns aren't important. The radiance is important. So this is kind of turning things topsy-turvy, because we're so fixated on the patterns, We're so fixated, we define ourselves and our lives and what's going on in terms of these patterns. Yesterday I was so-and-so and I was at such and such a place and I saw such and such a person and such happened and I'm worried about such and such and blah, blah. It's just all this, yesterday life. Today, life. Tomorrow, life. And not as a joke, not facetiously. There is profound power there. And again, we'll be going into this in great depth over time in the next few days. So, the very essence of the yoga of radiant presence is to stop classifying your experience. Let yourself let go of this overwhelming obsession, this addiction to classifying, to saying what's what and who's who and what's happening and where it is and how it is and what you think about it and what it means to you and whether you like it or hate it and all this other stuff. The very essence of this yoga is to let go of that, let go of orienting to your experience dominantly in terms of all of this obsession with classifying, and relate to it in terms of the radiance itself, which is the substance that is showing up that is being classified, right? So, in your field of vision, for example, the field of light. And you can classify, there's all these colors. Okay, cool. So it's showing up its colors. But what is it that's showing up its colors? Light. Okay. So the colors seem to have some degree of coherence. I can see, a blob of various shades of brown there and a blob of various shades of green there and so on, and that sort of has a certain shape. So I'll call that a t-shirt and I'll call that a wall. But it's light. And noticing that, again, turns out to be surprisingly powerful because, again, of the intrinsically transcendental and miraculous nature of the radiance itself. And so when you discover that your world is made of light, and light is miraculous, it kind of, puts a whole new bent on things. I mean, that things feel different. Things have a whole different tenor to them, have a whole different importance, have a whole different intrinsic priority to them. Okay, let's do a little experiment. I'm going to show you very directly how radiance works. I'm going to be giving you something. It's something that has never showed up in your experience. So the first part of this experiment is see where it is in your experience now. The thing that you've never experienced. Where is it? Kind of like asking where you were before you were born. Where is it? Well, you can't say, can you? But it's interesting. Look at, just feel it. Not as it, don't think about it. Just feel. Where is this thing that you've never experienced? Okay. Hope that's bad enough for you. So take one and pass them on. Let me know when everyone has one. If you don't have one and there aren't enough to go around, if you can sit real close to someone that does have one, you can share. Kind of like somebody else.
You can share radiance.
Well, you won't be sharing radiance, but you can share. Does everyone have one? Anyone not have one? Hands? Okay. I need one. Okay. Please sit this on your lap so you can't feel it. So it's not, if you're in shorts, maybe you can kind of sort of sit it like this on your shorts and against your belly so it's not touching your skin. Or you know what, you can put on the ground in front of you if you're sitting on the ground. Okay. So it's present in your field of vision alone. Okay. So look at it. Just look at it. Don't touch it for now. It's present in your experience, isn't it? Compare that to how it was before you had experienced it. Okay? Now, close your eyes. Just sit with your eyes closed for a while. Where is it now in your experience? Okay, now, vividly remember when you were looking at it, what it looked like, so you see it with your mind's eye clearly. As clearly as you can. Okay? Where is it now in your experience? How is it in your experience now? In what way is that different than the way it was in your experience when you were looking at it? And what way is it different than it was in your experience when you had never experienced it? So open your eyes, look at it. without touching itself. It's present in your experience solely as light in your field of vision. Right? That's the only way you know it exists at all. It has reality because it is present in your field of vision. And it's present. It is a light that is present in your experience, let's say, in common talk. Okay. Now pick it up in your hand so you can feel it, and close your eyes. And now how is it present in your experience? It's not present as light anymore, is it? It's present as touch. So this paper, and it may be present as thought, it may be present in your visual imagination as memory and so on, but this paper does not exist as light anymore in your experience. It exists as touch. It may exist as thought, let's say. And compare how this existence as touch, how does that relate to how it existed before you experienced it at all? In other words, what is this presence that it has now that it did not have then? What's it made of? What's it consist of? What's the substance of it? So what is the paper? Is there a paper? Or is there touch energy, sight energy, thought energy? Okay. So the paper is not a thing. The paper is an energy present in your experience. What thing was the paper before you experienced it, before you knew it existed, before you knew it was a paper? What thing was it? What thing was it? And when you're seeing it, what thing is it saying? This present, I mean, this qualities, it seems to have color and shape and all these qualities we're used to designating. You know? But what is that? What is it? Where's the paper? Is there a paper, or is there just experience? And experience does these amazing energies that are present in various ways that are not particularly connected to each other. I mean, if you had never seen it and reached through a hole in a wall and felt it in another, didn't know what you were going to feel, and felt it in another dark room. So the only experience of the thing was by touch. What object would it be? It would be an object that exists solely as touch energy in your experience. Is there a paper? There's just touch. When you see it, is there a paper? There's just vision. When you think of it, when you picture it in your imagination, is there a paper? There's just mental energy. Then think of everything you're experiencing right now. Look around you at all of the things you're seeing. You're seeing light. You're good at naming them and classifying the light as this pattern of this light is a person, this pattern of this light is a chair, and so on. So there's this light. Right? And when you close your eyes, where does it go? When you die, where's it going to go? Before you were born, where was it? The very essence of the yoga of radiant presence is exploring what is present. Explore what your experience is. Just feel your experience. That's all. Feel your experience, but feel what it is. Don't get wallowing in what you're used to thinking about it. Just feel it. What it is. Feel what it really is. What is it? What is it? What is this that you're feeling? You don't feel air. You don't feel people. You don't feel matter. What is it you do feel? What is it? So, let's look at some of the qualities of radiance. And again, when I talk about these things, look at your own experience. Don't just play with these ideas or hold the ideas or think the ideas. Look at what is happening in your experience actually. Radiance is instantaneous. It's only here now. There's no then. Where's the then? Find me some radiance that's a then. Radiance is here now. And it's not even here now because what does that mean? How long is now? Now lasts no time at all. As soon as something's appeared, it's already gone. It doesn't stick around. It's not like it sticks around for a second or a half a second or a nanosecond or even a nanosecond. It's just gone already. So it's instantaneous and there's no instant. It's miraculous. I mean, how does that make sense? It's dizzying. It's fucking weird. There's no way you can make sense of that. There's no way you can think it or follow it. But it's self-evidently true. Just look at the fact that this apparition is only now. And you can't get a handle on what now means. What now means? Where is now? How is now? So radiance is instantaneous. Radiance is non-local. Where is it? It's where it is. Well, it's here. But what does here mean? Here means here. Here means what we call the sky. Here means what we call the trees. Here means if it was night and we were looking at the stars, here means the Andromeda galaxy. Here means, when you dream, where's here? Well, it's here. Space or localization has no meaning. It has no objective correlate. It's simply a function of presence. Presence equals space. Presence creates space. What we call space is just a very vague and sloppy qualification of this miraculous fact of presence. When you close your eyes and you're huddled in bed at night, your experience is just as big as when you're standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. How big is your experience? How big is your experience right now? How big is the bubble of your experience? Does that make any sense? I mean, where is it? Well, we have this word here, which kind of means where it is, but what does here mean? Is there any there? So radiance is outside of time, and yet it implies time. All of our complicated notions of time are extrapolated from simply looking at this fact of radiance, which is instantaneous and has no duration whatsoever. And radiance is outside of space, and yet it shows up as space. When you dream, there's no space here, and you can dream about the Grand Canyon. You can dream about traveling from galaxy to galaxy. You can dream these vast spaces. Where are they? They just come with us. It just shows up with the dream, with the presence of the dream, with the radiance. Radiance creates time, radiance creates space, but it's outside of time and outside of space. And look in your experience right now. I'm talking about this right here. I'm talking about what's happening here now. I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm not talking about ideas. I'm talking about, notice how weird this is. Notice how this is, Check it out for yourself. See what's going on here. Radiance is absolutely irrational, absolutely complex, absolutely subtle, endlessly nuanced. Radiance is absolutely unfindable. It's completely obvious. Radiance is right here. There's nothing but radiance, but you can't find it. You can't pin it down. You can't say what it is. You can't put your hands on it. But it doesn't go away. You can't find it. You can't grab it. You can't pin it down. You can't define it. You can't even start getting your foot in the door of trying to sort it out or figure out what it is. Because it's completely transcendental. And this right here, that is actually present as your experience I'm talking about. This is what's transcendental. It's not some transcendentality that's out there that you get to one day after 100,000 lifetimes. It's like this that is present right here. Can you find it? Can you find light? Here's light. Right? Light is present. Right? Am I wrong? Undeniably, light is present. Can you find light? Can you get a handle on it? Can you define it? Can you touch it? Can you not touch it? I mean, all of that is just gibberish. It just doesn't make any sense. Because this is intrinsically transcendental, intrinsically miraculous. It's absolutely indefinable. You can't pin down what or how it actually is, how it works. You can't get any handle on it. Okay, here's a biggie. It's absolutely hyperdimensional, which means it's always arbitrary many ways at the same time, without any coherence whatsoever. So it's not present as this or that, it's present as everything at once. It's present as inconceivable, irreconcilable characteristics, flavors, apparently. And when you go looking for any of these characteristics or flavors, you can't find them. You can't pin them down. You can't define them. They just turn out to be empty names. Here's a dimension of radiance. Color. We're all very familiar with color. Color is a dimension of radiance. What is color? What is color? Well, this is color. Yeah, okay, cool, but what is it? What's color? What's brightness? And color is never just color. It's hyperdimensional. It's got texture and nuance and mood and flavor and vibe and God knows what, right? It's just always, experience is never simple. It's endlessly open-ended. It's always, wherever you start, it's like, it's also everywhere else and everything else. So there's always this amazing, it's like anything you look at is a dimensional doorway into infinite dimensions. And not in the abstract, I mean this concretely. By dimensions I mean realms of quality. Color is a realm of quality. Mood is a realm of quality. Texture is a realm of quality. I'm at a loss here, but there's just anything we have a word for is a realm of quality. And they coexist, and they are coherent, and they all, anything that shows up with an infinite and arbitrary range of more other dimensions simultaneously, and without a limit. You can't get to the limit of the dimensionality of what's present in any experience, in any sort of arbitrary set of characteristics that you tune into. So, I mean, this is part of the intrinsic transcendental quality of radiance, is that it's never one thing. It's always, you go to anything and it's, and we see this in very mundane ways, but we see this in arguably mundane ways, is You see something and you start thinking, and it reminds you of something, and you have a mood, and you feel something in your body, and there's all of these different, just sort of qualities and ranges and just dimensions of experiential meaningfulness or spatiality, whatever, however you want to classify it, that always comes with any experience. No experience is just simple where you just experience it and it stops. Doesn't happen, does it? Always, any experience just opens into one. And you can't find the bottom, you can't find an end to it. Because what it opens into also opens into endlessness, and that also opens into endlessness. And I'm not talking any abstraction. This is the actuality of experience. Look at your experience right now. Look at anything within your experience and watch how you go. It's like a stone skipping on water or something. As soon as you experience anything, you're instantly experiencing just worlds other with it. And this is intrinsic. This is intrinsic in what the radiance is. The radiance is all of these things. The radiance is all of it. It's not like, I'm seeing color and then I'm thinking of thought, and so there's two separate events. The thought is the radiance, and the color is the radiance, and they're not coherent. But it's one event. It's one thing. And this one thing is intrinsically infinite, intrinsically hyperdimensional. It always opens into moreness. Nothing is simple. Nothing ever stops. You get to an end. You don't ever get to an end of anything. Any point you touch your experience is a doorway that just goes into what? Into the next experience, which is another doorway that goes into, we call this the passage of time. Right? We call this the flow of experience. The fact that experience is continually opening into what? Whatever. And you can never say what it is. You can't say where your starting point is. You can't say what it's going to. You can't say how it's going. You can't even say if there was a starting point. It's all that stuff is just made up. But again, don't just trip on these words. Look at your experience. Be with the real time, your actual experience right now, and notice how interesting the dynamism of it is. The way it endlessly generates harmonics of itself. Any starting point in your experience, just think of anything, or look at anything, or touch anything, and where's your experience go? It just spins off crazily, and every spinning generates endless other spinnings, and each of those generates endless other spinnings. Right? Check it out, look for yourself. See if that's true. Okay. Radiance is absolutely dynamic. There's no stasis in it whatsoever. There's no stability in it whatsoever. There's no point where it rests whatsoever. It's always something else. It's always gone. And not just, and again, with arbitrary dimensionality, so it's not just necessarily gone from here to here, it's gone from here to... This is experience, all right? We all know this. It's just, we think of it on a space case, or God, I really tripped out, I really got distracted on that one. But that's the way radiance works. That's this energy of experience intrinsically does that. You can't make it not do that. These meditators that sit for 20 years and train themselves to not think are pretending to not think. It doesn't happen because you can't slow down the radiance. The radiance endlessly spins off into something else. It may do it subtly so you can sort of categorize it as a stability, but it's not really. There is no stability. It doesn't exist because radiance does not do that. It's not in its repertoire. It doesn't happen. It's easy to, and this happens a lot within spiritual. This is an aside. This is our break time. Entertainment. It's easy to theorize that presence is stable because presence never changes. And that's true, presence never changes. But you can't find it. So you can't rest in presence, because presence is not a thing. The only thing that shows up is radiance, and radiance does not rest. Radiance is intrinsically dynamic. And you can pretend, okay, I'm tuning out the radiance and I'm focusing on the present. So I'm ignoring the dynamism and going to that which is still. But you can't ever get there. You can pretend to. You can, almost a little more. But you're lying to yourself. It's not like that. Because the radiance does not stop. It does not stop. And the presence doesn't start. But it doesn't go away. The presence is the actuality of this experience. Your experience exists. This is actual. Your experience is actual. It's undeniably so. But you can't find it. You can't find this presence. You can't get to it. You can't sit in it. You can't leave it, for that matter. But it's not really a thing. It's just strangely so. Okay, back to our regular program. Okay. And all these qualities we're going over, we're going to be all these qualities we're going over, we're going to be revisiting them and playing with them a lot over the next few days, so it's not like you need to remember all this stuff, we'll be taking notes or anything. Also, I'm going to give you, towards the close of today's talk, I'm going to give you an outline which basically includes all these points to refer to. So it's not like you need to remember any of this stuff. And besides which, it's all obvious. When you get to radiance, if you wonder what its properties are, you just look at it. I haven't memorized all this stuff. I just look at radiance and say, well, what is it I'm looking at? And then blah, 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 all this stuff comes out. But it's not like these are important principles, it's just the very nature of what this is. And it's obviously so. So you look at it, what is radiance? But anyway, so we're going to be playing with all this stuff in exhaustive detail. I'm basically presenting an overview of the whole thing tonight, and then we're going to be playing with this and revisiting and looping back on it over and over and over again for the next 3 days. For the next 3 days, I'm going to be inviting you to play with the radiance. Radiance is intrinsically complete and whole. It never departs from itself. It never gets less. It never stops being radiance. It never stops being present. It never becomes anything other than radiance. There's always plenty of radiance. Your experience is always full of radiance. Always. It never diminishes. It doesn't increase, for that matter. But you can't pin it down. You can't find it. You can't measure it. You can't count it. It's not coherent, but it does not depart from itself. It does not become other than itself. It's always radiance, but the way in which it's radiance is always infinite, always multidimensional. But it is. It never departs from itself. It never becomes other than radiance. Whereas radiance is eternal. Radiance is a given. It is. You can bank on it. You can bet on it. And a nice little sideline, since it exists beyond space and time, you can find out that you're never going to die. Because radiance doesn't stop. Radiance does not stop. Presence doesn't stop. Because presence and radiance don't exist in time or space. They generate time or space. Time and space seem to exist because of radiant presence. But again, you can find this out for yourself. Keep going back to your actual experience. Feel this experience that is happening right now. That is your experience. That is what's real. This is just a lot of bullshit. Keep going back to that actuality, that reality, and explore it into any sense. Maybe you say, oh, I think all these points are wrong. Cool. That's okay. That doesn't matter. The point isn't whether or not these points are true. The point is that these points are invitations to explore what is true and find for yourself what that is. This actuality that, what is this? It's here now. Something is here, let's say. Maybe it's not a something, but something's going on. What is it that's going on? That's the point. That's the yoga of radiant presence. What's going on here? What's happening here? Feel it. Explore it, check it out. Okay. Oh my God, what did I mean by that? my outline is kind of abbreviated. Okay. Radiance is inconceivably engaged with itself. With inconceivable intelligence and on inconceivable multiple levels. It's all being with itself, looking at itself. I mean, that's how we effortlessly can abstract so many patterns. I mean, you can walk into a place you've never been, and you can instantaneously, without any thought at all, and with virtually no passage of time, name 1,000 things in the room or in the field of experience. How? How can you do that? How does that happen? Because the radiance knows itself. It checks itself out. It knows all of its modes. It's engaged with itself. It plays with itself. The radiance is very narcissistic. It's very interested in itself. It's interested in all its modes and all of its flavors and characteristics and so on. Okay, we touched on this earlier, but it bears repeating. There is no consciousness. There is no subjectivity. There's just radiant presence. We're used to thinking, my consciousness is experiencing the radiant presence. The radiant presence is the object, and my subjectivity, my I, is somehow. You can't find an I. You can't find consciousness. Those are just logical arguments. All that there is radiant presence. Doesn't make any sense. Complete gibberish. It's an equation with only one side. So what? So what? It's just how it is. But since it's miraculous, we can get away with stuff like that. It doesn't need to make sense because it's a miracle. The will of God, dude. Fiat. It's not the Italian car. Okay. There's unlimited range of qualities of radiance present within any field. So any arbitrary, take any arbitrary field within experience, and all these fields, of course, don't actually exist. They're imaginary and defined into existence. So take the field of vision. Okay, so right now in your experience in the field of vision, how many characteristics are present? If you started counting the different shades of color that are present, do you think you could ever reach the end? In an instant, let alone over a period of time, because it's all changing constantly, because the radiance is intrinsically dynamic and unstoppably dynamic. You couldn't possibly. How many shades of color are in this t-shirt alone appearing in your vision? Well, they're all kind of, dark, sort of a blacky brown or whatever. Yeah, but get down to specifics. How many colors are really present? How many colors, does this point exactly the same color as that point? No. Exactly the same color as that point? No. Exactly at that point. And how about this point and the point exactly so close next to it that you can't even differentiate them? Are they the same color? No. So there's an unlimited range of characteristics. It's differentiable, called differentiable characteristics if you want. It's arbitrary. Present in any field of experience. We were talking about the field of vision, say now. Take that much of the field of vision. Still true. Take that much of the field of vision. Still true. There's an infinite literally infinite range of characteristics present, fractally so, within any field of experience. Look at your field of touch. We've been talking a lot about vision tonight for no particular reason. Experience your field of touch right now. Just the whole universe of what you would classify what you're experiencing as any kind of a touch now. How many qualities of touch are present in that field? It's meaningless. It's gibberish because it's not like that. It doesn't look like that. It is as much as you care to find. Look closer and you'll find more. Of course, we're all experts at doing the opposite. We're all experts at rounding it off and not looking closely and this shirt is black. It's just one color. Is it? See what's actually present in your experience, and you discover these things. It's obvious. Okay, here's a biggie, and this is very practical, and we'll be coming across this again and again as we explore this yoga. There's infinite perspectives within radiance, or within experience, let's say, and none of them are truer than any other. None of them are more valuable than any other. So, all of a sudden you hear a car horn, and it's like, okay, so what? There's a perspective. But by perspective, I mean, let's say, something that your experience sort of orients around, let's call it. Or you get distracted and have a thought and remember something that happened in your childhood, or you have a funny digestive sensation in your body all of a sudden. So all of these. So if you look at your experience, there's this constant cascade of these perspectives that are just wafting through experience. And none of them are truer than any others. None of them are more important than any others. None of them are bigger or smaller than any others. Is a dream you had last night bigger or smaller than the experience you're having now? That question is meaningless because size and quality is generated by experience, and experience is just spinning this stuff off effortlessly, just implying perspectives and field of vision. So in experience, you're just cascading through it faster than the speed of light through these various fractal perspectives of this and that and the other, and with no coherence. I mean, it's just a wild ride. If you look at your actual experience, and we'll be doing this at great length, sit quietly. What they call meditation, what some people sometimes call meditation. You sit quietly and you sort of try and do nothing. And that's like your experience. It's like, woo! They're off and running. But anyway, all this is pretty obvious. But so radiance intrinsically spins off infinite perspectives, and no perspective is more or less important than any other perspective. No perspective is truer than any other perspective. So your field of vision is no more or less true than some fantasy that pops into your head. It's just a field of radiant presence, which means undefinable, infinitely dynamic, hyperdimensional characteristics appearing in experience. Same old, normalcy. Right? Has there ever been anything else? Okay. No form, or let's say no pattern of radiance exists in relation to any other form. They are each direct radiation. They are each shining forth from infinity directly. So, you see me sitting in this chair, and you see the computer next to me. The computer's just shining forth from infinity, independently, autonomously, from itself. I, as an apparition in your experience, which is all that I am to you, right, am shining forth from infinity directly. two fingers, and this one's shining forth from infinity directly. It has nothing to do with the fact that this one is also shining forth from infinity directly. So, in other words, there's not an interconnected web of wholeness that holds things together. Here's try an experiment. Close your eyes, please, for a minute, and just look at what you see in your field of vision with your eyes closed. And again, you'll see what you see, but you might see something like myriad tiny little flashes of light. Might be faint light, might be shades of gray, and they're very unstable, and they sort of dance around or whatever, and maybe they form into larger patterns sort of randomly and so on and so forth, right? I don't know if you see anything like that, but if you do see anything even vaguely like that, each one of those points of light is just shining from itself. It's just radiance. It's not each flash of light doesn't need to know or care what any of the other flashes do. They're each just an autonomous flash. They're each the totality of reality. Each flash of light is the whole shooting match. And yet there appear to be uncountable myriads of them. It doesn't make any sense. How it is. So, radiance is always, the occurrence of radiance is always the direct expression directly from the very core of reality. Anything that you live and experience is it. It's a real thing. Just like bang, naked. From the very center, from the very essence of the thing. Okay. We've talked about this a lot, but it bears repeating because it's our main nemesis in all of this. All objects, all patterns, all things, all conditions are entirely arbitrary differentiations that are imagined and defined into existence in imagination of imagined groupings of qualities of radiance. The radiance is real. The qualities are real, even though you can't say what the radiance is or how it is, and you can't say what the qualities are and how they are, but they're real. But the patterns have no coherence. There are no things. So, you look at this computer, you're not seeing a computer. You're seeing an incredible range of colors and brightnesses and textures, none of which have anything to do with each other. You say, well, yeah, but they kind of seem to be sitting there and not really moving around too much. I don't see it like blowing apart or flying across the room. So what? Coincidence. Just happens to be that way. But every flash of light you see from that computer has nothing to do with any other flash of light you see from that computer. There's no computer. There's just this grouping of flashes of light that just have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And in imagination, we create an object, we create a thing called a computer, or whatever you want to call it. We create a material object that has stability and coherence and is connected to itself and has a history and so on. All of that exists solely in imagination. So all of these patterns and groupings, in short, all things, all entities whatsoever that we're used to being able to differentiate in our experience, are imagined into existence, completely arbitrary. It's as if you look in the sky and imagine you're connecting some dots of light that you see that you're calling stars and say, oh, that's the Big Dipper. Big Dipper doesn't know it's the Big Dipper. The stars in the Big Dipper are just stars. They're not connected. Each star is not even connected to itself. It's just a connection it's just a collection, an arbitrary collection of infinite flashes of energy from reality. And each flash is reality itself. And of course this ties into our addiction to naming things and describing things and relating to things in terms of our semantic definition of, this is a chair, this is a room, we're people, we're here for a retreat, which is just, all of this naming and describing, it literally, we just pop this out of our imagination and we're so used to relating to it as if it was accurate and true. It's complete gibberish. All you can really say is there's inconceivable radiance present. Okay. But all of this defining, all of this generating of meaning, all of this creation of defined worlds and defined universes and defined contexts occurs spontaneously within radiance. What's doing it? Radiance is doing it. So it's not a problem. It's not an issue. It doesn't need to stop, because that's just another mode that radiance goes into. It's just another mode that radiance appears as within as all this astounding apparent meta patterning, and none of it makes any sense. And again, none of it, of course, is coherent. It just seems to be that way. So, all of this personal meaningfulness, all of this, all of our self-definition and our definition of our life and our definition of what's going on, spontaneously appears within this field of radiance. You didn't do it on purpose. You weren't like a 1-month-old infant that couldn't even speak and had the amorphous thought pop into your head. I think when I get older, whatever that is, if I do, whatever that is, I'm going to work on really defining and creating and inventing a system of defining making sense of all this chaos. It just happened. You didn't do it on purpose. You don't do it on purpose now. It appears. And, spontaneously. You can walk into a place you've never been and name whatever, and spit out 1,000 words designating things you see. Right? But that comes from the radiance. The radiance is doing it. That makes no sense at all either, because radiance doesn't make any sense. So it makes no sense that this happens, and it's not intrinsically a problem. The only way it's a problem in practice is if we're so addicted to relating to the actuality of the radiance of our experience in terms of these problems, so that we don't let ourselves appreciate the actuality of our perspective, which is that of infinite transcendental radiance. So we cut ourselves off in imagination from transcendence, from the actuality of miraculous transcendence, which this intrinsically is. We cut ourselves off from that because of this addiction to following this spontaneously appearing stream of defining. Okay. Radiance can appear on infinite range of levels of density. So remember when you're looking at the paper, and it's very material, it's very solid, it's very opaque, it's very here, and then you close your eyes and you remember having looked at the paper. It's present in the same way. It's radiant, but it's finer, it's subtler, it's sort of more. It's like kind of on a dream level or something, or a thought level. So, but that's radiance too. And there's subtler levels too. There's levels that are so subtle we're not even used to experiencing them as experience, because it's just these vague implications and nuance, like the depths of deep sleep. If any of you have been had a general anesthesia or something, the qualities of experience that are present in that presence seems like basically nothing. It's really subtle. It's really, but it's not. There's an infinite range of radiance going on there. Of course, because there's nothing but radiance. Radiance never stops. But it can be very, very, very subtle, to the point where it seems like nothing if you insist on relating to it on a gross level. Just like when you go to sleep, it can seem like, you lie down in bed and you're drifting off to sleep, it can seem like, you're sort of losing solidity. But you're not losing radiance. Radiance is radiance, whether it's subtle or what we coarse and all that. And exactly what any of that actually consists of can't be said. What is this coarseness that physical, so-called physical vision consists of? What is the more subtlety that the so-called imaginary vision consists of? We can't really say, can you? No. But we can notice that this phenomena occurs, and we can't say what it is, we can't say how it is, we can't say anything about it. Because that's where radiance leaves you. In the end, radiance leaves you with just the simple fact of radiance, and you can't go further than that. All of these modes of analysis are dead ends. You look at radiance in terms of dimensionality, you look at it in terms of pattern, you look at it in terms of all these things, and each one of them just peters out. It's just gone. You can't follow it further because you get to a point of, I don't know, I can't find anything. I can't make sense of this. And that's the very essence of radiance. It's transcendental. It makes no sense. And that is very powerful. It's powerful to be indeterminate. It's powerful to be ambiguous. Because that's what freedom looks like. Freedom is anything. Freedom is I don't know. And that's what this is. That's where this is. That's how this is. So discovering that turns out to be very advantageous. Okay. Only a couple more here. I know it's been a long day, and I'm sure you guys are all toasted from traveling. I hope that you had a chance to have a little bit of a rest. But anyway, if you didn't, tough luck. just a few more minutes. Okay. Here's another one, a biggie one that is easy to trip up again. Radiance spontaneously appears as focus. Experience tends to generate focus. You tend to notice something, and it's dynamic. So whatever you notice, say a portion of your field of vision or something, it'll slip away, and all of a sudden you'll be noticing something else. So there's this endless dynamic tendency of foci, well, to be correct, but focuses to be constantly showing up within radiance, within experience. And what the focus is elusive. You can't say, how does focus happen? Okay, I'm giving my attention to you. What's happening when I do that? How's that happen? What's going on? All of a sudden it's drifting off to the light on the wall. What happened? How'd that happen? What's going on with that? Can't say, of course, because it's dynamism of radiance. But it's obvious that this happens. So focus is not a problem, it's a fact that radiance spontaneously tends to generate focus. It tends to show up as focus. And it's not a problem. But in terms of the yoga, there's a very powerful trick that you can discover to work with that. Just because you happen to be focused on something with your awareness does not make it more important. And just because you're not focused on something does not make it less important. So you're looking at something, say I look at your face, and all of a sudden it's very sharp and in focus and I can see all the details. And then the wall behind you with the face of someone over here is sort of very vague and fuzzy. But that vagueness and fuzziness is just as actual as the sharpness that's here. And the sharpness isn't any more real or more important than the vagueness and fuzziness. So the full field of experience is equally important, whether or not it happens to be in focus at the moment, whether or not it is sharp or fuzzy. Sharpness is not a preferred quality. Fuzziness is not a problem. Most of our experience is very fuzzy. In fact, all of it is if you look closely. So, again, we tend to be chauvinists about focus and about sharpness, but this is, we're cutting ourselves off from richness. Just because you happen to be looking at something, you're also seeing the full field of your vision. It hasn't gone away. It means I'm not paying attention to it. Doesn't matter, you're seeing it. Well, I'm not seeing it very well, or clearly, or sharply, or brightly. Okay, cool, but you're still seeing it. Okay? Why does it need to be clear and sharp or bright? It's present. If it's present, it's present. Bang. What is present? Radiance. Can radiance be fuzzy and dark and unclear? Sure. Can radiance be sharp and focused and bright? Sure. So what? But it's not better or worse. It's just, these are just some of the modes of radiance. Radiance can show up with all of these qualities. That pretty much covers our program for the first session of your Yoga Radiant Presence retreat. I'm going to hand out the outlines right now, and while we do that, if anyone has any questions or observations or anything that you are compelled to vocalize, you could start something like that.
Peter, when you talked about the point before this presenting, can you give an example of obviously there's no better or worse, whether it's very dense or very dense, but when radiance is very dense, could you give an example of that? What would that be like, carrying a heavy suitcase? That wasn't so dense.
That's dense compared to now remember to do it. Now feel what it felt like before this. That's a lot less good. Anyone didn't get, they can get one of these wave points that are coming around. You got lots.
Is there any difference at all between who I am and radiant presence?
No.
Not at all.
No. All that there is radiant presence. There is nothing else.
Okay.
There's no you, there's no other, there's no reality, there's no unreality. There's radiant presence. And this is it. If you want to look for a you got to look there because there's nothing else. So you could say, well, yeah, I'm radiant presence. Okay, cool. But you can also say, I'm not radiant presence. Okay, cool. But radiant presence doesn't go away. It's all that there is.
So if you're sitting in a cell and fighting with another guy.
No. Keep it real time. Talk about what's present right now. How about if I'm sitting in a room? Well, okay. No, here we're in a cell, and there's another guy.
Getting caught up in the imagination,
Right.
And which leads to suffering.
Right.
And when that's happening, that's happening.
Sure.
And that's the manifestation of radiant presence.
It's not just a manifestation of radiant presence, it is radiant presence itself.
Right.
Vanity is radiant presence, getting caught up is radiant presence, suffering is radiant presence. But vanity isn't fantasy, it's radiant presence. Getting caught up isn't getting caught up, it's radiant presence. Suffering isn't suffering, it's radiant presence. This is true and it's experienceable very directly. And when you see it, suffering's gone. What is there? This. Right. Can you call it suffering? Sure. Can you call it failure? Sure. Can you call it success? Sure. Can you call it life? Sure. Can you call it confusion? Sure. But what is it? It is this very, 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 very strange fact that I'm here lying and calling radiant presence.
But if suffering or intense pain or whatever is being experienced, you can say it's radiant presence.
No, it's not about saying. Saying does no good whatsoever. You got to see it.
Yeah.
Because it is. What is it? When suffering's happening, what's it made of? What is it that you experiencing? Are you experiencing something right now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How do you know you're... That's great, of course. But how do you know you're experiencing suffering? What is it that's present that what's your evidence subjectively? And I'm not asking you to prove it to me, but what are you referring to when you say, oh, I'm suffering, or there's suffering present?
My thought.
Okay, cool. So thoughts are present. What is the thoughts made of? Don't think about it. Look and see. What is the thoughts made of?
Nothing, really.
They're made of nothing.
Yeah.
So nothing is present. Cool. I don't have a problem with that. Your suffering is nothing. It's nothing to me. And it's nothing to you. You just saw it. But you got to see the truth of it. It's not a matter of fancy arguments or philosophy or aspiration. See what is actually present in your experience. Whatever you say is present. What is it that you're actually referring to experientially by that concept or that word or that association? It's going to be experience itself. What's experience made of? Well, there's the question, isn't it? That's what we're playing with here. So if it's thought, what is thought? It gets very trippy. And as it gets trippy, it stops being a simple thing of, I've got a problem and I'm suffering as a result of it. It starts being, wow, something really bizarre is going on here. And all of a sudden that's a different context, isn't it? It's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to you talking, I could feel, that everything was happening in that bubble.
Sure, good.
And it was, it was really clear. But I noticed my mind's tendency to sort of, focus on you and you're talking, and then I go, well, that's really the radiance and sort of pushing out the sides again and getting the radiance.
But the focus is the radiance too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And tunnel vision is radiance.
And even the person I think is you, so to speak, the appearance of you.
Oh yeah,
radiance.
totally, nothing but.
I don't have to keep going behind it and saying, there's something behind there.
No. Yeah, that's important. Radiance is it's completely explicit. It's what's on the surface, and what's on the surface is the depth.
Yeah.
It's not like what's on the surface is somehow evidence of or caused by something more profound and so on, some endless chain back up to God. It's like, no, this is it.
Right.
This presence, this immediate, obvious presence is the very depth, is the absolute ultimate. That's kind of, I was kind of talking about that point earlier when I said that your being, or let's say the being of your experience, is not some little being that exists as a trickle down or an effect of some greater being somewhere that somehow, some more profound being that somehow is causing your being as a lesser thing. No, your being, the presence of your experience is it. That's the depth. That's the very, very, very absolute. That's the greatest of the great. Just this immediate superficial presence is it.
Right. It's funny because when I see you and hear you talking, it sort of takes place in a bubble of energy that's always buzzing, like bees or something, or whatever. It happens in a kind of there's a buzz to the whole thing.
Well, sure.
And you can kind of check out the buzz, but then you sort of see somebody talking within the buzz, and you kind of go between the buzz and what actually you're seeing.
Sure.
It's very strange like that.
But is the buzz always there?
Well, I've been there tonight, but
No, say you're having a mediocre day or something, and you look around.
It's got to be there, yeah.
Yeah, not just got to be, but look and see what is there.
Yeah.
And if you look closely, if you look precisely, you will see buzz, because buzz is what we got.
Yeah.
This is scintillating, this is vibrating. Your experience has absolutely no stasis. Those of you that know me, I said this probably a bazillion times. A simple experiment: sit in front of a really blank wall with a fairly good lighting. Just sit there and look at a blank wall with no pictures on, just a plain blank wall. Look at it for 5 minutes and see what you see. You're going to see just this. You're going to say, God, where'd the wall go? Because that's what experience is. Experience is intrinsically dynamic. It's what you see. Like earlier, we closed our eyes and I said, you might see all these, billions or uncountable little bright flashes of light and so on dancing around. That's what you see with your eyes open too. Because that's what radiance is. Radiant presence is intrinsically dynamic. But look for yourself and see if it's true. See if you can find anything that isn't dynamic. See if you can find anything that isn't a buzz. It may be a subtle buzz. It may be a very high frequency buzz. It may be a weird flavored buzz. But buzz is what we got. I mean, it's all, that's what it's made. That's what anything whatsoever that appears. That's what appearance is made of. And that's the point of access to the dynamism of the radiance, is the fact that it's alive. It's literally alive. It's life itself. It's the life force. It's the kundalini and so on and so forth.
So like the buzz is holy.
Yeah.
And even the appearance that the buzz seems to go into.
Sure.
That's just as holy and just as significant.
Because there's no difference. The appearance is the buzz. You know, when you see something, you can say there's light and it's showing up as an appearance, but the appearance is the light. When you see something, you're seeing light, and light is a buzz. You know, light is. I mean, look into the sun sometimes. Look into a light bulb. Just look into a light bulb. You know, I mean, we're not talking anything that's sitting there dully doing nothing. You know, you're being bombarded. It's both central. I think that's enough for tonight. We don't want to get too toasty. Tomorrow there's a yoga program, which I don't remember exactly what time it is. I'm sure it's on your schedule. Okay. But you all are welcome to attend or not. That's being sponsored by the folks that are here. And our next meeting will be at 9 o'clock, and it will be in the meditation hall, which is sort of across the courtyard from here, on the other wing of the main building. Breakfast is what, 8?
What time is the meditation?
I think it was 9:15.
Well, no, the meeting's at 9. I'm just wondering what time breakfast is.
Oh, breakfast?
Okay, good.
8 o'clock to 9 o'clock.
So basically we're off until 9 tomorrow as far as the retreat's concerned, and or you're off whenever you want as far as you're concerned. That's through the retreat. It's your retreat.
There's very few chairs in the meditation hall. There's only about 6 chairs.
Do they have cushions or something?
Yeah,
Plenty of cushions.
Okay, good. Well, we can sit on the floor.
And
Lie on the floor. Oh, thank you.
move some of the chairs
Yes, let's move the chairs so that it's along the wall.
onto the side.
Please remember to lift your chair and not slide it. And if you can't do that, ask for help.
Peter?
Yes.
It starts at 9:50.
Where?
For your...
Well, I think start at 9. Paper, okay.
Stop your